Well, good evening and welcome once again. It's that budget time when the government in power can, but generally doesn't, make a strong statement about the policy direction it plans to take. Instead, it comes out with this Dhobi list that plastics I'll do this, coal I'll do that, with some little and tinkering a long list of issues which seem to be frankly obsolete in this day and age. So generally those kind of budgets are called in Mumbai time pass. Now the only difference is that this time this budget was done in the middle of a crisis. A crisis, many say, which is as bad as 2001, 91 and 81. It is not an exaggeration, and I've checked around with a number of international agencies that India's sovereign rating, which is currently just above junk level, one slip and the world will rate India's bonds as junk. Now just that thought and the impact of India hitting junk rating is what probably terrified this government more than anything else, and it's the key fear factor behind the fiscal deficit being kept at around 5%. 5.2 last year, 4.8 this year. And remember, he got 5.2 by cutting capital expenditure by 77,000 crores, but he got 5.2%. If the deficit hit 6%, most of the opinion I've got is that India's sovereign bonds would be rated junk. So this 4.8% that he's promising is very important, and he's got through that hurdle. I think with this, most people say no downgrading of India's rating after this budget. However, that's just the first hurdle. He has to deliver on reforms. And was there anything in this budget that gave you confidence that this government is on a path to reforms? Every crisis in the past has been followed by reforms. India only reforms when they're back to the wall, when we've got our backs to the wall. Have we missed that this time, or is it going to come? Is this budget just part of a reform process? Well, to understand exactly this, because we've got one man who's been through many crises, who has, as they say, never waste a crisis. and NK Singh, who's also been your partner in arms in many of the earlier crises, right from 81, 91, 2001. Anything in this budget that indicates for the whole world that India is serious about reforms?
Well, I mean, first of all, you mentioned the fiscal deficit. You don't call that a reform, though it's very important.
It's very important. That's the key foundation. Without that, nothing matters.
Sure. Yeah. The second thing that the finance minister said, very clear, that we've got to get back to 8% growth. Okay?
Right.
I think in the budget speech, he has laid out a large number of initiatives, most important of which actually is the business of getting regulatory clearances which are impeding implementation of projects out of the way. Now, the Cabinet Committee on Investment, which he specifically mentioned,
right,
was devised as a mechanism to take care of these problems. You know, I think when the constraint on growth is of this type, the solution
procedural
is not so much reform. The reforms are important, and there are many things he's talked about which are reform oriented. I mean, for example, GST, probably the single most important reform around the horizon is the GST.
Right.
He did say, by the way, he invited all opposition parties to join with the government and cooperate in making it possible. I mean, it does require a constitutional amendment, so it's not a simple thing. But he made a provision in the budget as a sort of indication of good faith that come along and let's get it done. Believe me that that will have a huge impact. I think he's also restored a lot of confidence among foreign investors. Uncertainties that had come up, you know, in connection with the GAR, which has now been put away for 2 years, plus some changes made.
But didn't the people, a lot of people said he should have been much clearer, definitive about that's the end of GAR. But it's
it's not the end of GAR.
I mean,
look,
because
all
in the sense that
the retrospective, the whole Vodafone case is not put to bed. And then this new element that's come up about Mauritius, that looks like the Inspector Raj again, that we can go beyond just tax residency requirements. We can look into anything. He did clarify that I meant you can go only one further step, but that's not mentioned, so that has to be brought in.
But
it's just that feeling.
No, but all of that is after 2016. So there's a lot of time for any further refinements to be done.
Right.
DTC he's talked about. I mean, in direct taxation, he's also given a hint that he wants to go back to what the original concept of DTC was.
We've